morning, afternoon, or evening. This is Wyatt with Apex Auto Reviews, and today we are going to be doing a review on this latest generation of the Subaru BRZ. This is a 2022 model year, and on top of doing a review, we're going to be doing a slight comparison on something else that people might be cross-shopping, which would be the latest generation of the Miata, which I just happened to drive about a month ago. So I'm gonna go ahead and do an overview and my thoughts on this, and also just a slight comparison on how I think it handles and drives compared to the Miata. So I personally think this latest generation of the Subaru BRZ is a beautiful looking car, especially at this price point. I like the body lines on it. I think the proportions are good. And just small subtle things like LED lighting and the dual exhaust tips that are symmetrical. I like the stance of the vehicle, how it comes out at the rocker panels there. Gives it a nice look, how then it comes back in. And then it starts to bulge back out towards the back tires. The vents on this vehicle are actually functional. All right, so starting out here with the front end, we'll kind of take a look at the headlamps. I do like how the LEDs kind of start at the top and then create like a sharp line and swoop on down all the way through. And then looking in the light housing, you can see that it does have a projector style headlamp. And then LED high beam right there in the middle. And then moving on down, you can see you got the opening there for the radiator, and it actually has functional vents, not just some fake plastic there on the side. And then you got this front plastic splitter. Of course, you wouldn't expect carbon fiber on something at this price point. And then the hood itself has an overall very mild kind of shape to it. Nothing, no fancy bulges, anything like that. It does come up a little bit on the hood towards the fenders there on each side, which gives you good reference points from the inside as far as turn-ins and whatnot. And then continuing down the side here, as you can take a look on the inside, you can see that these vents just kind of come out the side. So although they're functional, it doesn't get directed towards the brakes or anything like that. Speaking of which, the brakes are a two-piece steel rotor that are 11.6 in the front. The suspension up front is a strut-based suspension, and then if you kind of look on the inside, there isn't really any felt lining. It is sprayed. It does definitely create some road noise, I must say. Maybe there is some functionality to it, but if it swoops around and then it looks like it comes out another functional vent, which, I mean, overall, even if it doesn't really do much for the vehicle, it still looks cool, I must say. Continuing down the side, you can see you got kind of a sweeping then to a sharp line that kind of disappears into the door, fades into the door. And then overall, pretty clean look on the side, except for the rocker panel, which swoops out and then cuts back in towards the rear wheel well. It's got a nice look, and then it also kind of emphasizes as it goes back in, or it's kind of deceiving in a sense, makes the back end look like it pops out a little bit more, but I think it looks good. And then moving on towards the rear here, you do have 11.4 inch motors in the back, and then you do have a double wishbone suspension in the back. And as far as tires, this does have Michelin Sport tires on it. Michelin Pilot Sport, I should say. And both the front and rear have 215 width, 40, and then they are 18-inch wheels. Both this and the Miata, I'm surprised that it isn't a staggered setup. Then you can see here, you kind of got like a little deflector here on the back. Obviously you got your gas cap here, not capless, premium unleaded fuel only, and it isn't a locking gas cap, it looks. And then moving on to the tail lamps and rear end here. So you got your brake lights that wrap around. These are actually your turn signal. So they do light up orange when you put the hazard or blinkers on or unlock the vehicle, as you can see there. And you got your third brake lamp there in the center, with your reverse lights being down at the bottom. And then as you can see, it's got a backup camera that is integrated there, integrated a little better than the Mazda. And then also this cleverly hidden trunk button that is right there in the black trim in the center there that runs along. Speaking of trunk, now that we have it open, definitely more usable than the Miatas. I believe that this has 6.3 cubic feet of storage. Looking at my sheet, yeah, 6.3 cubic feet. And then, unlike the Miata, of course, this having back seats, you might have to pull both of these. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Well, you're gonna have to move the seats up, but yeah, a little bit more storage than something like the Miata. And then looking down at the bottom here, I do like the dual symmetrical exhaust tips on the opposing sides. They are actual real exhaust tips, not bumper mounted fake ones. And yeah, they got a nice look to them. Speaking of exhaust, let's go ahead and fire it up and see what this flat 4 sounds like with the exhaust on this. So popping the hood on this brand new BRZ, got to use a prop rod because, you know, can't put the struts on it. Weight savings, right? Probably cost cutting. But anyways, you can see here you got the co-developed Toyota Subaru, and this is a 2.4 liter flat 4 over the previous generation's 2 liter flat 4. And this now has around 230 horsepower over the 200 horsepower, and it has, I believe, 184 foot-pounds of torque. One thing that I've not only heard plenty of times through doing research, watching videos, but also talking to the owner of this that has driven a previous generation, as I'm sure many people that have done any research on this, that torque dip that used to be in the mid-range is now gone. And while I've only driven this, I can say that it seems to fully rev out with no weird dips or anything of that nature. And the owner of this also said that it is quieter than the previous generation, which was horrendously loud buzzing. And I gotta say, if that previous generation was louder, man, that thing must have just screamed in not a good way, because being behind the wheel of this car and hearing this thing rev out, it is just a buzz. I gotta say, that is one of the downfalls of this car, is listening to this engine. So let's take a look at the BRZ's interior, shall we? This one is the limited trim, with that being the top trim. So as you can see, it's leather stitched on the outside with red contrast stitching. And then you got some in the middle here. And then you got Alcantara suede in the center here. Versus the lower trim, which has cloth. Nice solid sounding door when you close it. Go ahead and fire it up. You gotta push in the clutch. I like kind of the boxer looking display in the front, boxer engine looking display. Let's go ahead as usual and start with right in front of you. Yeah, tilting, telescoping steering wheel. I gotta say, although I do like the layout of kind of the controls and look of the steering wheel, I wish that it was thicker, as you can kind of see looking at my hand. It's pretty thin. I wish I had bigger notches here, but I do like the stitching and the look of the steering wheel. Looking at the display in front of you, it is slightly customizable. So when you go ahead and put it in track mode here, it changes the digital display here in the center. So your tachometer is more of a bar, gives you a red flash when you're supposed to shift. And then also the left side here is customizable using these buttons here over on the right side. So you can scroll from left to right to kind of go through different things. Not too intuitive, but you can see some things. Battery voltage and temperature. And then if you go over to kind of more performance metrics, you got a G-force meter, lap time stopwatch. There's kind of a torque and horsepower graph. And then you go over to media, which I don't have anything hooked up, and then just some of your safety features like blind spot monitoring and whatnot. You can go ahead and go through there. So, and then just setting, you can change from kilometers to miles an hour, and really just metric to standard. Then over on the left side here, you do have your volume controls, seat controls, your phone controls, answer and call source. And then one thing I forgot to mention, if you have Apple CarPlay connected or Siri over on the right side. For cruise control, actually it's a little stock here down at the bottom. Speaking of stocks, this has kind of that BMW-ish stock control, which some people hate. You click it down, it goes back up, so you don't really know if it's fully clicked sometimes, especially you got the music up, whatever, unless you look at that in front of you. But it does have just a slight tap to do the lane change, a few blinks. Over on the right side, you do have your windshield wiper controls. It does not have auto windshield wiper feature, so that's something to keep in mind. Moving over to the center here, infotainment, very intuitive. Overall, pretty relatively quick. It doesn't have navigation built into the car, but you do have Apple CarPlay. It's not displayed right now, but if I plug my phone in, it would show up here. As you can see, it's dim right there, but you got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto there. And yeah, besides that, everything's just very simple, easy to use. To homepage, phone apps, you know, seek buttons, radio control, tune, volume, physical control buttons. Moving on down, I do like the feel and look of the climate control functions. So just to simply change the temperature, I do have it synced right now, but you can just quickly turn this and it'll show you a digital readout of your temperature. You can set it to auto, so it'll automatically adjust the fan speed and what vents it comes out of. The only thing is, like, you look at this mode button and kind of like these toggle looking switches, you think it'd be like for some performance metric in the car, but no, this is all for climate control here. Really, your performance adjustments for the car are all located down here. Not too much. You can put it in track mode, and as you saw, it changed the display. It also tightens up the steering feel, and then also the pedal response as well. And you can also just turn straight off traction control, stability track, right over to the left here. Then moving on down, you got your heated seat functions. Moving even further back, here's your center console storage, which is more so just cup holder space. When I saw it initially, I thought it would be more intrusive, but it actually isn't as bad as I thought it would be. If I shift it back. This does have a short throw shifter, so I'm not really sure how much further back it would go. But for me, being at 5'9", with my arm all the way back, it still doesn't quite reach the front cup holder. So the back cup holder really it doesn't get in the way at all. So yeah, I mean, just the fact you gotta like reach back to grab your drink versus like the Miata, where you can, you know, take the removable cup holder from behind, put it in the side if you don't have a passenger. We'll move on to the other storage compartment, which would be the glove box. It is dampered and just hard plastic, but at this price point, you know, what do you kind of expect? And no light in the glove box. It is nice that you can actually fit water bottles within the doors there. So you also have that option for drinks if you don't have an open container. And I'm not talking alcoholic beverage, just like a can or something. Next, we'll move on to the materials of this vehicle. As you can expect, it's not going to be the highest quality, but you do have a more soft touch Alcantara suede-like material here on the top of the door. Just moving over and on down, this is all hard plastic. This is kind of some sort of leatherette that's just pressed on to the door here or glued on. You do have a stitched armrest, but it is padded back here, but where I would put my arm, which is up a little further, it is hard as a rock. It's just straight up plastic underneath there. And then of course the rest of the door is just all hard plastic. You got, of course, your window control switches here, full auto, lock on lock, mirror adjustment. Moving on over to the dash area here, mostly kind of plastic with some rubberized material that wraps around the top here. And then above the gauge cluster, you do have this little Alcantara piece here. Then yeah, moving along the top here, like I said, more rubberized material here, and then the rest is just kind of harder plastic. But once again, what do you expect at this price point here? You're not expecting too high of quality, but overall everything's laid out and functions very well. So for what you're getting at this price point, you definitely get a good bang for your buck. And this actually having, well, back seats, I'd more so say it's for storage. They do fold down, so you can expand the trunk a little bit. But as you can see, you could move the seat up and kind of squish the passenger and make it maybe a 3-seater. But as far as my driving position, and I'm 5'9", there is no way you're gonna fit even a child back there. So yeah, more so just for storage, but makes it a little more practical than something like a Miata. According to the owner, this does have the optional short throw shifter with, he said this SDI knob was an additional $200 option. He didn't pay for it. Someone actually backed out of the car at the last moment, and it came with that shift knob. I think it's a little silly to have an SCI shift knob in here, but whatever. So yeah, to get into reverse, pull up, move over, and then as you can see here, pretty short throw shifts. Overall, pretty smooth engagement. I think the Miata is a little smoother, but speaking of reverse, camera quality isn't the best, not terrible. One thing I gotta say about the shift lever here is you don't get like the shake and direct feel that you get in the Miata. This stays pretty sturdy and solid. You don't get a bunch of like moving around and rattling. All the pedals, including the dead plate, have a nice look to them. You're not really buying a car like this for sound system, but it's something that I like to address in really every vehicle. This does have a 8-speaker sound system, and it is, I think, 196 watts. So as you can see up here, the 2 humps, you got 2 of the speakers there on the dashboard for the mid and highs. The bass comes from within the doors there. And then you got the last speakers in the back there. Nothing on the rear deck to hit those low bass notes. I did a frequency response test, and there is distortion at different frequencies, especially the low ends and then the upper end of the bass range. It also does shake the door panels and the exterior mirror. So I would say the Miata definitely takes a win as far as with the Bose sound system over this. And then looking up top here, there is no option for a sunroof. As you can see, it does rise up for either more headroom or helmet room on both sides. And you do got just halogen, unless those are a warmer color LED. And then as you can see here in the sun visor, and that is the only lighting for the interior. But as far as having no sunroof, I'm someone that does enjoy having open air or just more light in the interior. So that's something for me that is a shame that there is no optional sunroof in here. And then as you can see looking out, you do have those nice bulges towards the fender area that give you good reference points for turn-in apexes. Good visibility, I would say, overall for a car like this. Alright, so what are my impressions of driving this BRZ? Well, one, even though I've gotten a little bit used to it, that engine buzzing is a little horrendous. Maybe it's because I was driving, Corvette Stingrays with a 6.2 liter and whatnot not too long ago, in between the Miata and this. So I'll have to go back and play a little bit of the Miata sound just to see, but I don't remember it being quite this annoying. A little bit more used to it as I've driven the last day, but it's still just a horrendous kind of buzzing sound. I mean, its handling makes up for it, where you kind of just forget about the sound of the engine. Just use it as an indicator of when to shift. When it starts buzzing and bleeding your eardrums, then you know it's time to shift. But without doing a direct comparison, like back to back with the Miata, it's really hard to tell which one handles better. They both handle phenomenally. At this price point, you're not going to get any better really than this. Maybe if Honda came out with the new S2000 or something like that, that would be up there with this. But they, for whatever reason, haven't capitalized on that market. And yeah, with that being said, there's more than just the handling factor, which these both handle, like I said, very well. They're both different cars. Like, one's a roadster and one's a full-on coupe. Hard top coupe. There's, like, right now, I wish that it at least had a sunroof, because the sun's shining, not a cloud in the sky. I'm driving in the mountains right now. It's absolutely beautiful out. So for that reason, you'd want to be in something like a Miata. And but for something like this, having the back seats, you do get that, in a sense, practicality for a little extra storage room. I wouldn't consider it extra seat room, because those back seats aren't going to really fit anyone unless you squish your passenger by moving them up and then fit someone behind them in a pinch. this definitely has more storage. So if you're someone that wants your passenger to be a little bit more comfortable and have like that extra storage space, then you're gonna want to go for something like this. If you're looking for just a weekend driver and you're gonna pack light and you want to be able to fold the roof down, whether you get the full-on hardtop foldable one or the soft top, Miata would be the way I would go over this. They both shift pretty good. I like the shifting, I think, a little bit better in the Miata, and it just feels a little bit more nimble and lightweight. Well, it is 400 pounds lighter, but it's hard to tell, being also the power delivery, being that I am driving this in Colorado versus the Miata I drove in California. There's like a 4,000 to 5,000 foot elevation difference in where I've been driving those vehicles. So if I was to drive this at sea level, I mean, I might think that the power delivery is something completely different. But still, even up here, the power delivery, it's pretty linear. It's good overall, I would say. Could it use a little bit more power still? Yeah, it'd be cool if they make an STI version. It still has enough power. I wouldn't be upset with a little bit more power though, of course. But yeah, with that being said, a few other just little nitpicky things. The interior of this, you do get a slightly bigger display that's a little bit more intuitive. I just wish it was higher up and also a little bit tilted towards the driver, kind of like I mentioned in the Miata video. Besides that, the display, although that being in the gauge cluster, it shows you enough info for what you need for a car like this. Heads-up display would be nice, but kind of hard for a price point like this. A few other things to consider. I would say the visibility is maybe a little, well, it's better in this. Especially, I like the mirrors where they're mounted and the A-pillars. Out of your peripheral vision, you're able to see pretty good. It's easier to see out the back, even though these rear quarter windows don't do any good unless I was to move this passenger seat forward. I can't see anything out of that still, but at least on the RF Miata, those kind of pillars that go down in the back, that's a big blind spot. So also headroom, I'm sure to get more headroom in this, so for someone taller this might be more desirable. So it's really going to come down to factors of space and just overall maybe brand loyalty, and yeah, I mean, a little more power in this, but I would give each a drive. And at the end of the day, they're both great cars. I think it's really going to come down to the individual and what they're looking for. Are they looking for, I mean, they're both great weekend cruisers. This, I would say, is probably, or it is, a little bit more day-to-day friendly. So if this is like a primary vehicle that you maybe put snow tires on, or if you just live somewhere warm, this is more practical. But if you're looking for a weekend cruiser, I would probably say the Miata, at least me personally. Also, other things you got to factor is if you're going to be bringing people with you, because obviously, like I said, this has more storage space. The headroom's better. The passenger and, well, both the driver have more room. So yeah, I would like a car that has a full down hardtop over a fixed non-sunroof vehicle. And yeah, with that, I'm going to conclude.